Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. This is a how-to video on how to do a clean installation of Windows 10 onto either a new computer or a machine that you want to wipe out everything on the drive and do a fresh install. Maybe the drive's corrupted, maybe you replaced the hard drive, whatever. Now, I've got my monitor set up over here and my computer here. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but for the moment it's not important. If you look in the front, you'll see I have a USB memory stick. How did I get that stick, you ask? I will show you at the end of this video, but in short, there will be a link in the video description below that will take you to Microsoft.com. Microsoft allows you to download, without having to enter a Windows key, Windows 10 on a program in another Windows computer that does not have to be running 10. You can do it on 7, 8, 10, doesn't matter. And you have the option to either create a DVD or a USB stick. Stick a USB stick in, and it will create a bootable USB stick that you can then bring to another machine and use to install Windows, which is what I've done here. I'll show you that process at the end of this video. But for now, what I'm going to do is turn the computer on, and this computer is currently set to boot to the USB thumb drive. Not all computers are. Some computers you may have to hit F9 or F10 or go into setup and do it. That setting will be different on each machine. Now, what you see here is very quick to boot. We've got two choices, Windows 10 setup 64-bit or Windows 10 setup 32-bit. The reason why this choice is here is because I made a universal install flash stick. You have the option when you create it to make it 32 or 64-bit only. I made this both to simply show you this screen so you would understand the difference, and this way I can have one stick that does both. If you only pick one, it's a 3 GB download. If you pick both 32-bit and 64-bit, it becomes a 6 GB download because it actually puts both versions on the USB thumb drive. If you have 4 GB or more in your computer, you should pick 64-bit. If you have less than 4 GB and no plan to upgrade, you probably should pick 32-bit in most cases. It does use less memory. But with 4 GB or more, the only way to use all that RAM is to pick the 64-bit option. This computer has 8 GB of RAM installed, so I more or less have to pick the 64-bit option because otherwise we can't use all that RAM. So I'm going to choose the 64-bit option and hit enter, and it says loading files. Now this is so much faster than the days of reading them off of CDs or DVDs. Flash memory is absolutely superior to physical spinning media of all kind. I do have a solid-state drive in here and a hard drive. We are going to be installing on the solid-state drive because that's the only one that makes sense. If you've never used a solid-state drive or an SSD before, the difference is night and day. It is so much faster and so much more responsive in general. Modern high-speed computers are bottlenecked terribly by using a hard drive. And here we have the setup screen. Now I speak English and I'm in the United States, so I'm going to select all the defaults and I'm simply going to click on Next and then Install Now. Now you can also use this media to repair your computer. There was a repair your computer icon on the bottom. That's for another video. For this time, I'm simply showing you how to install Windows 10 on a brand new drive or a freshly formatted drive or a replacement drive. Now it says setup. Now it comes up and says activate Windows. The product key looks like this. If this is the first time you're installing Windows on this PC, you need to enter a valid Windows key. Now, if you have a product key and you plan to put it in, go ahead and put it in here. It makes your life easier because using the product key, it can automatically detect which version of Windows that you have, Home, Pro, etc. Now, if by chance you don't have your product key handy or you plan to buy a product key or whatever, you do have the option of clicking I don't have a product key. Now in this case, it's going to say, fine, which version do you want to install? Windows 10 Pro or Windows 10 Home? In this case, I'm going to choose Home because that's what my license keys are for. And I'm going to hit Next. The version it's installing is dated February 13 of 2016. This is an important distinction. If you, I'll go ahead and hit Accept the license terms and hit Next. Now I have the choice to do Custom or Upgrade. Really quickly, Windows 10 came out in the summer of 2015, but the version on here is from February of 2016. Microsoft has done a wonderful thing. When you go create a USB stick, it downloads the now current version of Windows 10, not the release to manufacturing. This saves you hours of Windows updates and reboots and all sorts of nonsense. They keep updating the image so you don't have to do the original install and then patch over and over and over. Saves so much time. Excellent feature. Anyway, so upgrade or custom. Now, if you're going to the trouble of doing this through a USB stick, you're probably going to choose custom. If you're going to do upgrade, you do it from within Windows. I'm going to choose custom. And you'll look here and you'll see there's a bunch of drives and partitions. I actually have data on the hard drive in here, but I'm going to wipe that out because I don't want it. And so I'm going to delete all the partitions, and no, there's no data on here I need to save. If you have a corrupted Windows install that is totally messed up, and you are 100% sure you have your data safe somewhere else, external hard drive, a burned DVD, online backup, if you're absolutely sure, there's a lot to be said for wiping out all the existing partitions. I'm clicking delete as I hit each one of them to wipe them out to make absolutely sure there is no corrupted data left over. This is needless to say, you should not do this if you need to save your data. But that's a conversation for another time. Now, I've deleted those partitions. I had Windows installed on the hard drive. I'm doing a clean install on the SSD. You can do a clone. In this case, I could have, but I'm taking the opportunity to do a clean install. You can do a clone from the hard drive to the SSD and keep all of your data, but I needed to do a video on a clean install, so here we are. Now, you'll notice that there are now two drives that both say unallocated space. Drive 0, which is actually your first drive, they start at 0 and then go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, shows 223.6 gigabytes. That's actually what's called a 240 gig drive. The amount of space Windows sees is never as much as the drive manufacturers advertise. That's normal. The second drive says 931.5 gigabytes. That is my 1 terabyte hard drive. So the choice is fairly easy because I know which one is my SSD and which one is my hard drive. So I'm going to choose the small one. I'm not going to set up any partitions or anything else. I'll worry about that later. I'll hit next. Windows will do it for me. Now it says copying Windows files. I am going from a flash USB drive to a flash solid state drive in the machine. This is much faster than if I was doing it off of a burned DVD onto a hard drive. But it's still not instant. It does take some time. So now it says getting files ready for installation 1%. This will take longer than most people would want to sit here and watch. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to keep recording, but I'm going to start editing out sections of this and simply note how long it took to go between each section, because otherwise you're sitting here watching a progress bar. It's at 3%. Who wants to watch that? And so, cut. And we're back. You can see the progress bar is complete. It is going through its finishing up process. That took about 20 minutes or so to go through that process. I edited that out because, of course, who wants to watch a progress bar for 20 minutes? And now it says restarting in 7, 6, 5, 4. You can also hit the restart button down at the bottom, but it will do it automatically. Now that it's restarting, take the USB stick out. Put it aside. You're done with it. You don't need it anymore. That's the time to take it out. And you'll see it comes up with the Gigabyte logo because I happen to have a Gigabyte motherboard in this computer. I told you earlier I would tell you more about this computer. This is a good time to do it. This is an AMD A10 7870K CPU. What is that, you say? It is a sort of 4-core processor with really good integrated graphics for a modest price. It's about $140 for the CPU. It's got a nice built-in graphics card, better than anything Intel offers. If you want to play light games without having to buy an added graphics card, it's a reasonable choice. Now, the CPU itself, the processor, the brains, is slower than Intel, but the graphics is faster than Intel. Now, by far the fastest graphics choice, if you're looking for performance, is an Intel CPU and an add-in graphics card, but that generally costs more money. In this case, we're looking for a budget machine. I put this together and I'll do a separate video and I will link to it when that video is done. This computer is meant to be a budget gaming computer. I was looking at building something for $300, $350, complete case, power supply, the whole 9 yards, that had enough graphics power to play modest games. It's certainly never going to play all of them, but it plays reasonable games, and it certainly gives you a choice as opposed to going out and buying a pre-built machine. The SSD that I've got installed in here, now in that price point you're going to be hard pressed to put an SSD in, but I put one in because I like SSDs, and frankly I'd never live without one. There's a 240 gigabyte SanDisk SSD Plus in there. Those are running about $60 right now. You can get the 120 gigabyte version of that drive for about $40. Personal choice, but honestly I think for an extra $20, I mean that's a couple of meals or some Starbucks. Doubling your SSD space is really nice. Now the hard drive in there is a Western Digital 1 terabyte 7200 RPM hard drive. It's a decent hard drive. They run between $50 to $55, and you can certainly skip the SSD and run Windows off of it, but instead of taking 20 minutes to do that first part, it would have been at least an hour. Everything just takes a lot longer on a hard drive, but you certainly can do it if you want to. The motherboard, and I have written this down because otherwise I would not remember, it is a Gigabyte. The socket type is FM2 Plus, and all the AMD APUs have an FM2 Plus these days. The model of the motherboard is GA-F2A68HM-HD2. You can see why I had to write that down. A link to it will be in the description below, and of course the other video I'll talk more in detail about it. Getting back to the reinstallation of Windows, you'll see it says get going fast. Now, I personally hit use Express settings. But caution, for those of you who are concerned about privacy, those of you who are concerned about how much data your computer is sending to Microsoft, this is the part where you want to pay attention. In very small print, on the bottom left-hand side, it says Customize Settings. If you choose Customize Settings, it's going to give you the option to turn on and off various settings. Now, most of these are diagnostic settings. They have to do with sending error reporting data to Microsoft, but they also have to do with marketing and advertising. For example, one of the things Windows 10 has built into it is called Safe Search. Windows will protect you against going to trickery websites, websites that look like the real thing but aren't. For example, misspellings, like going to Microsoft.com but putting in 2 T's or 2 O's instead by mistake. People have gone out and registered Microsoft.com and put malware and viruses on those sites, because if you just type one letter wrong, you'll end up on a site that looks like the correct one but isn't. Windows 10 has protection for that and will pop up a warning saying, warning, you have entered a trickery website. However, in order for Windows to do that, Windows has to send the websites that you browse to Microsoft servers. So somewhere in the deep bowels of Microsoft servers, they will have a list of every website you go to. That doesn't bother me personally. I don't go to anything that is a secret. I go to normal websites. Some people care. If you care, that's where you change them. Security and customizing and data will be a different video. For now, I'm going to hit Express Settings, but I want to make you aware that Windows does basically a lot of phoning home. It is not bad phoning home. Microsoft is not trying to hack your bank accounts or steal your data. They don't care. It's all anonymized. But they do have to communicate with the servers on what websites you go to and what you search for on the internet in order to provide you with those protection services. Just be aware that it does in fact do that. Now, we come to the sign-in screen. If you don't have a Microsoft account, get one now. Learn more. Now, if you don't want to use a Microsoft account, you can't actually type anything in here. You have to go to the bottom of the screen where it says skip this step, and that is where you can type in a local account. I personally use a Microsoft account. I highly recommend it. It will sync your settings between any computers you use. It'll allow you to use OneDrive. There's nothing wrong with using a Microsoft account, and it does not require that you use a Microsoft email address. You can use a Gmail or a Hotmail, well, Hotmail is Microsoft now, a Yahoo account, any other email address, they don't care, with a Microsoft account. But if you don't want to use one, you want to click on skip this step on the bottom. Now, since this is a demonstration machine, I'm going to do that rather than log into my personal setup. This is what the local screen looks like. Create an account for this PC. Who's going to use it? Tech Deals. And I'm going to hit next. Now, if your computer is online when you sign into the Microsoft account, a lot of your settings and customizations will already be set up in Windows by the time you get in there. It'll carry forward things. That's nice in many ways, but that's a personal choice. I don't judge. Some people prefer local accounts, some people prefer Microsoft accounts. For families, Microsoft accounts I really like. I've got kids. And in Windows 10, the Microsoft accounts sync really well for your children. Microsoft allows you to have child accounts that are controlled by parent accounts, and I can have family monitoring on the machines that blocks certain websites or has a whitelist. I get weekly activity notices emailed to me on what my kids are doing and what they try to do on the computer. It gives me the ability to have separate logins for each of my kids, so only the programs I want each of my kids messing with. You know, I've got a 10-year-old son and I've got a 5-year-old son. They should not be looking at the same stuff. I've got certain things whitelisted, such as the school website. My kids' school has a number of online things they do. They come home from school and their homework is now on the internet. They have a special place they log into. So I have that whitelisted so they can open a web browser on their login, but they can't go anywhere else. They can't go to the news sites. They can't browse the web in general. So I like that feature. I mean, if you've got a family, it's really nice. You'll notice it says, let's start. We're already here. I love solid state drives. These things are so much faster. Now, it currently says in the bottom corner, searching for display driver. Understand this is a raw, plain install. When you buy a new machine, all the drivers and everything that you need are already provided by the manufacturer. Windows 10 includes most things you need. The single biggest thing that it doesn't include usually are display drivers, but it will pull a decent display driver off of Windows Update for you. If you're using an add-in graphics card, NVIDIA or AMD, you should really go to NVIDIA or AMD to install those drivers. Now, the very first thing I do whenever I install Windows, as strange as this might sound, is I reboot the computer. Why? Because it just finished installing. It's currently doing some checks in the background. And when I come down here and hit Start, Power, and hit Restart, is that really necessary? I don't know. It's a habit from years ago, back in the Windows 95, Windows 98 days. And I've just always done it. Anytime I do a fresh install of Windows and it comes up and says, great, we're ready to go, the first thing I do is I go ahead and do a reboot to have a fresh boot done. And you will notice we are already back to the Windows screen. That is the power of solid state drives. If this had a hard drive in here, that would take at least a minute. So I'm going to go to the Start button. And this is what you should do. You could skip the first reboot if that may not be necessary. That's a very old habit of mine personally. Go to Start, go to Settings. You want to click Update and Security. Very first thing you should do, and this, by the way, is true if you buy a pre-built computer and it comes to you out of the box. Maybe it's an HP or a Dell or an Acer or an Asus. Very first thing you should do on any new computer is run Windows Update. So I'm going to click Update and Security. I'm going to click Check for Updates. And this is going to take just a minute. And look, it's already finding updates. Again, that is so much faster on, you're going to hear me say that over and over, the solid state drive. When I had Windows installed on the hard drive on this thing, that took a minute or two. That was seconds. The difference is night and day. Now, some of the speed here is my internet connection. Now, in fairness, if you are on a slower internet connection, it's currently downloading updates will take longer. I've got a 75 megabit down, 75 megabit up connection here, so it's a fairly decent connection. If you want to watch the progress of the actual download, right-click on your taskbar on the bottom of the screen, and hit Task Manager. Now it'll pop up with almost no information right there, and what you're going to want to do is hit More Details. I then click the Performance tab across the top, the second tab from the left, and I'll drag this over so you can see what's going on. And I come down to Ethernet. Ethernet is your network. This is what is being transmitted from, I've got this plugged into an RJ45 cable because I've got wired networking in my office. Now it's currently not downloading anything, but what it is doing is accessing the solid state drive. And if you look, disk 0, which is what we picked during the installation, is currently being pegged. Well, it was at 100%, now it's dropped off a bit. The CPU is churning, so basically it's doing its processing and its thinking. And we're back. I edited out a chunk of that because during the actual Windows Update process there was enough stuff going on there that was just taking longer than I wanted to put in a YouTube video. Usually I just sit here, I would talk about the computer for a bit and a few other things, and frankly it got to be almost 10 minutes, and that was just too long. So we're back at the Windows desktop. If we come down to Start, just to verify, we'll click on Settings, we'll click on Update and Security, your device is up to date. I'll click Check for Updates one more time, and I'm sure it'll come up and say there's no updates. Unless there's a Windows Defender definition of, nope, your device is up to date. That's it, we've installed Windows 10. Now I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this video, now first of all, if that's all you wanted to see and we're good, thanks for watching. Like the video if you like it, don't if you don't. Remember to subscribe down there. I mentioned I would, and comments, feedback, suggestions, please. Was this helpful? Was this not helpful? What else do you need to see? I promised you at the beginning of the video I would show you how to make one of these. Let's do that. And the link to this will be in the description below. So if you're done, you're done. But otherwise, we're going to go to Microsoft Edge, and we're going to type in Windows 10 USB tool. You want to make very sure that you're going to Microsoft.com, no other websites. Too much trickery out there. We want to we'll take the first one. And I'll put the link to this in the description below. Come on, Internet. There we go. Now, the very first button is not what you're going to want to click. You actually want to look further down. The first button says Upgrade Now, but that opens up to upgrade on this machine. On another computer, to make this USB stick, you want to come down here to the second one on the bottom that says Download Tool Now. And it comes up with a running security scan. And we hit Run. And yes, we want to run this. And at this point, you can close your web browser. You're done. This is a small, lightweight tool that will download the version of Windows that you want to put on a USB stick. You need a 4 GB stick for only 32-bit or 64-bit Windows, or you'll need an 8 GB stick if you want to have both versions on the same thing. You have to accept the license agreement and terms. And then it's going to ask you, it's always getting a few things ready, isn't it? And then it's going to ask you, I'll go ahead and stick this into an available USB slot. What do you want to do? Upgrade this PC now or create installation media for another PC? Well, there's no need to upgrade. We're already running Windows 10. Create installation media for another PC. And I'll hit Next. Now, it's going to ask Language, Edition, and Architecture. There's a checkbox that says use the recommended options for this PC. Uncheck that box because we're not making a stick for the use on this PC. We're making a stick for use on any computer. I'm going to check on architecture. Now, if you are absolutely sure you're only going to run the 64-bit version of Windows, okay, make the stick for 64-bit. I personally make it for both because USB sticks are large and this way I don't have to worry about it. But you can choose both. On Windows, there are 3 options in the drop-down. Now, this is for the United States. The options will change depending on your language. Windows 10, Windows 10 Home Single Language, and Windows 10 N. The Windows 10 Home Single Language will, of course, just include English. It'll be a smaller download, and it'll only be the home version, not Pro. I've never used this. I can't imagine why you would unless you're extremely bandwidth limited. But Windows N is essentially the European version, I believe, missing some features. So I would never choose any of those. I would just choose the standard Windows 10 version, and then I would hit next. And then it's going to ask you, choose which media to use, USB flash drive or ISO file. An ISO file is what you would burn to a DVD. And Windows 7 and later has the ability, Windows 7 and 8, for example, have the, as do 10, have the ability, you can right click, if you have a DVD burner in your computer and you get a blank DVD, you can put that in there, you'll make the ISO file and you right click on the ISO file and choose burn to DVD. And it will burn it. You don't need any third-party burning software to burn an ISO to a DVD. However, we are now in 2016. USB drives are everywhere and they're cheap and they're fast, so use that unless you absolutely have no other choice. USB flash drive, it says it needs to be at least 6 gigabytes, and that's because we chose both 64 and 32-bit. I'll hit next. It's then going to ask where to install it. Now there's only one choice because I only have one USB drive. It looks and it knows what a USB flash drive is. If I had 3 or 4 plugged in, it would ask which one. Now, I'm not actually going to do this because it actually takes about 10-15 minutes to download it and to create the USB drive, and you don't need to see that. At this point, if you hit next, let it do its thing. When it's done, there'll be a finish button. Take the USB stick out, and you are completely finished. So again, was this helpful? Like the video. Was it not? You know what to do. Subscribe is down in the corner. Comments, feedback, suggestions. Was this long enough? Was it too long? Did I tell you what you needed to know? I appreciate your constructive criticism, thoughts, feedback in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.